Hello and welcome to Prospects to Pros. I am your host, Nate Tice. We have another mock draft extravaganza. Really just one person's mock draft, but it's a two-rounder, so double the fun. That one person with the two-round mock draft is the Athletics' very own draft expert who is here to help me go over that. Dane Brugler, how are you doing today, Dane?
I'm good. It's nice and chilly. It's I think -2 out. The feels like here in Warren, Ohio. So it is very, very chilly here. But I think a lot of people maybe stuck inside or passing the time with this mock draft. A lot of things, a lot of topics that we can go through with this.
I got to enjoy my outdoor time. I usually have my first espresso. This right now is my second espresso. My first espresso of the day, sitting outside, reading, catching up on stuff, doing a Wordle sometimes if I feel like doing it. But now I got a fire pit, so it's even better. So the winters here, we do get winters here in Vegas, but it's more like 30s and 40s. It's not bad. It's just more like, ooh, a little chilly, a little blanket. That's it. So I did enjoy this morning's coffee with your mock draft, which was, like I said before, for the third time, a two-rounder, which I know is quite the exercise to do. So let's dive into it. There's some names that we've seen. We have Caleb Williams on top to the Bears, Drake May, number 2 to Washington Commanders. And then there's 4 more quarterbacks in this two-round mock draft, several in the first round, a couple in the second round. We have 3 receivers in the top 6. That's kind of the highlights, I would say, especially in the top 10. But it's very fun because it seems to me that you have a couple risers here, a couple guys that maybe are creeping up boards or creeping down boards, maybe even off the two-round mock. But starting with the quarterbacks, because they're going to be the big name guys. Said before, Williams is going to the Bears. You got May to Washington. But then you have Jane Daniels, the third quarterback off the board, going to the Falcons. I'm thinking on that because I like that choice. I thought that was a very fun one. So I was just curious how it kind of what got you to there and maybe other quarterback landing spots that maybe you got to.
And it's interesting because in order for Jaden Daniels to go to the Falcons, he has to get past the Patriots at 3. He has to get past the Giants at 6. It's always tough when a team could potentially go in the direction of a quarterback, but you decide not to. With the Patriots, we're at a kind of an interesting spot with their organization. Obviously, Bill Belichick no longer in charge. Mm-hmm. We're not quite sure what direction they're headed with how they view that roster and who's really in charge making the personnel decisions. Right. There's a lot of unknown there. So me going with Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 3 to the Patriots instead of the quarterback Jane Daniels, part of that is just lack of information at this point in the process. Part of that is they have an opportunity to take arguably the best player on their board instead of maybe reaching a little bit for the quarterback. And so they go with Marvin Harrison Jr. And then with the Giants, this is another team that I know they made the playoffs just a year ago, but it doesn't feel like they're a rookie quarterback away from really getting back in this thing. They need help multiple spots. The offensive line needs help. The pass rush needs help. They need more firepower at the weapons, especially at wide receiver. How badly do they need a wide receiver, a true number 1? And they haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Odell Beckham Jr. So it's been a couple years, and
Odell's been on like 3 different teams since then.
Right, that was a lifetime ago. And so they're in a spot at number 6, if you're the Giants, where you can possibly get one of these receivers. And I think we have to remember, too, when you talk about a first-round pick, specifically a top 10 pick, this is an ownership decision more than anything. And especially when you talk about a quarterback.
Highlight. Yes.
And with the Giants, we know how they feel about Daniel Jones, the ownership. They love him. Now, I don't think they're married to him necessarily where it's all other options are off the table. Joe Schoen, he has been looking at all these quarterbacks and we have evidence of him at these college football games throughout the fall. Most of these games that he's going to, they're big-time quarterbacks playing. So he has seen these guys. He's done the work on them. I still think at the end of the day, even with Daniel Jones coming off the ACL injury, better chance they go with a top receiver or a different direction than they do with a quarterback. So long answer to get to Jane Daniels. They're at 8 to the Falcons. But I think it's realistic. I think there's that is a realistic path to happen. And I mean, obviously, we have to preface all this with saying, hey, it's mid-January. We don't even know who the Falcons head coach is going to be. We don't know. There's so many dominoes that are going to fall here. But with the Falcons, with that offense. It feels like a ready to go offense. It feels like a team that is not that far away. You look at what Desmond Ridder last year and all the turnovers. He accounted for 12 interceptions, 12 fumbles. Jane Daniels had 4 interceptions, 3 fumbles last year. He's a guy that takes care of the football. And I think that when you look at the total skill set that he brings, I think the Falcons are going to be really interested. If they don't go Justin Fields, if they don't go a different direction in the offseason, if they wait until the draft, Jane Daniels sure makes a lot of sense.
It does. There's a lot of teams with their quarterback situations, even ones that have one right now. I'm very curious. A lot of them feel at a crossroads. Obviously, the Falcons is more of an open road to determine that. But I thought it was just, because when I did my most recent mock, I think I had the quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3. And that's the thing with the Patriots is I could see him taking a tackle. I could see him taking a receiver. I could see them taking a quarterback. Like all of those make sense. They have options there, but if they are not committed to a guy, it could cause a whole lot of things because somebody's going to like Daniels. I really think that. Then I think the most popular pairing in the top 10 for everyone's mock and the one that makes the most sense for everybody involved is Joe Alt going to the Tennessee Titans. Right. I think that's like, okay, yeah, done. I think your line on it was like one sentence. You're just like, yeah,
that's it.
I got nothing else to add here.
It was 2 sentences because the second sentence was, I have nothing else to add. Exactly it. Right. Because I think you look at that left side of the line with Peter Skoronski at left guard and Joe Alt at left tackle. And that'd be a great asset to your offense for the next 10 years. But it's interesting with the Bears in the top 10 because I even mentioned this. I think half of the Bears fan base are going to be upset that I had Caleb Williams going 1. The other half of the fan base is going to be pissed at me because I have 3 receivers off the board in the top 6. Right. So at number 9, what direction are they going in? Because you'd think they'd love to have one of these receivers there, pair him with DJ Moore and whichever rookie quarterback they take at number 1, assuming that's the direction they go. But in this scenario, like I said, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3 to the Patriots, Malik Neighbors at 4, and then Rome Odunze at 6 to the Giants. And again, this is why mock drafts in January aren't silly. Even though a lot of things are going to change. This is very easily go 0 for 32 when we look back at this in April because of all the dominoes that are still to fall. Yep. But it's the thought exercise. It really is beneficial for everybody to go through these thought exercises, examining each team. What are their draft philosophies? What have they done in the past? Where are they trending? It's not as simple as, okay, what's their top need? Boom. Okay, tackle. There you go. Like, it's not that simple. There's so much more that goes into it with draft trends and everything else.
The agencies.
That'll play a big part. Sure. Yes. And all the coaches that are going to be hired throughout the process. And so there's a lot of things that have to happen, but with the way things look right now, there is a realistic chance that all 3 receivers, those top 3 receivers, could be off the board here. And if the Bears don't feel comfortable with, say, a Brian Thomas Jr. At taking him as a top 10 pick, they might be in a position to take the best defensive player off the board here, because that's how it played out in the mock draft. Offensive players went 1 through 8. Number 9, the Bears end up taking Dallas Turner, who I think you pair him with Montez Sweat, those 2 edge rushers. Essentially, you're using your first 2 picks, your first round pick and your second round pick this year on pass rushers, along with obviously the first pick overall. But it's a chance to really upgrade one of the most important positions on your roster. And with Dallas Turner, it's a really nice situation because he's not going to ask to be the guy that's Montez Sweat. Dallas Turner can be the Robin to his Batman, and because Dallas Turner moves like a middle linebacker, but he plays like a defensive end, a true defensive end, because he can play the run. They
use him as a spy sometimes too.
Sure.
So
They'll use him as almost like a Micah Parsons sometimes with the way that he can rush from different angles because he's so strong with his hands. He plays so violent, and so to add him to the mix there at number 9, even though I don't know if that's high or number 1 on the wish list for Bears fans, I really like this outcome for Chicago.
And I think they are a trench first team anyway, so that makes a lot of sense. And I think they're set at tackle for a while. Braxton Jones, I think, is at the very least
played. Yeah,
he's I would even say a good left tackle. At the very least, a solid left tackle. And I think Wright really had a nice year as a rookie rights on the right side. So I always kind of at first was looking at the tackle position, but I have seen people, bump this guy inside, do all that. It's like, I don't know. I don't see them doing that because I think they're set there. But I think Turner's an interesting call there. I think my most recent mock, I had the first 11 or 12 picks for offense. And I was just like, I couldn't figure out where I was pulling the trigger on Turner or a corner. Your first corner off the board. Well, I should actually say this. You actually had a second edge go off the board, which was Latu from UCLA going to the Vikings at 11. Have you what have you liked with him? I got to watch him very recently. I understand kind of the appeal, but is this kind of where he's kind of being seen right now, maybe in the top half of the first round?
Well, obviously the medicals are going to be a big part of his evaluation and where he actually ends up. He had to medically retire at Washington and left there, had some doctors kind of go over things with him, and they approved him, said you're good to go. And the last 2 years at UCLA, he has been unstoppable as a pass rusher. And it's not just the physical traits, his ability, the first step quickness. It's not just his bend. It's the crafty handwork that he has, that he plays with. It's really impressive, the different doors he can open with the things that he sets up. And so the Vikings are a team, you look at some of their picks in their early rounds the last few years, they're not afraid to take those injury risks. And so if Latu, as long as the doctors say, there's some stuff in his background, but he's good to go right now. There's no, could another hit potentially lead to something? Sure, but that's true with almost everybody in the NFL. So, as long as the doctors give you 2 thumbs up, I think he would make a lot of sense for the Vikings. I actually had the Vikings going defensive line with both their picks, a chance to really get better on that side of the ball.
No, that's a great call about their appetite for injury risk players, because they took the 2 DBs in the first draft,
Lewis Seen,
and the corner
Andrew Booth,
Booth, and then they also in free agency. That's why they signed Murphy for kind of a decent contract for what the player he was because of injury stuff, and also the Davenport from New Orleans.
Marcus Davenport,
Yep,
who's hurt a lot this year, but
by design. But Murphy, when he was playing, was a positive player as well. But there's teams that do that. Teams are going to have some appetite for that. And there's some teams that just go, nope, take it way off the board. Now we're not even dealing with it. But again, it depends on input and again, what you're willing to tolerate. I also saw that you had, just to round out the top 10, you had Brock Bowers going number 5 to the Chargers, making a lot of fans very happy. And that I think is, just giving Herbert weapons, and Bowers is one of the best weapons in this class or in a lot of classes. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I understand why you did it.
Well, you just said it, weapon. Again, I don't think we get, if you're getting too hung up on just the fact that he's a tight end or listed as a tight end, I think you're missing you're missing the point. Yeah. This is a versatile weapon, and he can with the versatility to line up in line, but can also be a wide receiver if you want him to be. He's a weapon, an offensive weapon, and the way that you can utilize, as long as you have a plan in place. And I think it's only tapped out by a lack of creativity by an offensive coordinator. Brock Bowers is going to make it easy on you to utilize all of that talent, and so people are going to bring up, Kyle. People said the same thing about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was a Pro Bowler as a rookie. It's not like Kyle Pitts has been a terrible player when he's been out there. The offense has contributed to that in Atlanta.
He's still like 22.
and you don't let past mistakes elsewhere dictate who you draft in your organization, in your building. If you, obviously the Chargers are in a state of flux. They don't have a head coach right now. They don't have a general manager. That will play a part in this, but trust your coaches, trust your plan to build. And I don't think teams will have any trouble drafting Brock Bowers in the top 7 picks.
And to draw one little narrative comparison, just because going to the Chargers and who they're interviewing for their head coaching spot, and Mr. Harbaugh is who got a lot of use out of Vernon Davis in San Francisco. Was Harbaugh's offenses. So now you got Bowers right there.
You watch Michigan there. And you see AJ Barner, you see Loveland.
Oh yeah.
You see these tight ends eat. That would, if Harbaugh ends up. Man. Who's that?
Loveland's a freak, man.
I wish we could talk about him this draft process, but he'll be in next year's class because he's fun. He's a lot of fun. We'll see what he does with whoever the next quarterback is at Michigan. Which, heck, let's just talk about him now, Mr. JJ McCarthy. Yeah, we talked about 3 quarterbacks so far.
Yes.
Yeah. he did officially declared, just so for people that don't know, the deadline for underclassmen to declare came and went this past Monday. Caleb Williams from USC was the final underclassman to formally commit and announce that he was going to the NFL, which I talking to someone in the league about, is there something going on here? Like, why is he dragging his feet here? And he made the comment, he knows exactly what he's doing. This is purely to get people talking. It's why some people wait to the last moment on signing day to pick their hat for college. It's all about eyeballs and to get people talking. And it's not, CJ Stroud did this last year, but CJ Stroud had just played a game a week before and was realistically thinking about going back to Ohio State. Yes. This situation with Caleb Williams, he hasn't played a game since November, and he knew a long time ago he was going to the NFL. He's been doing his draft prep for a couple weeks now. So this is purely to keep people talking about him. Hey, it worked. So JJ McCarthy officially declared,
he already ready to go. It was
exactly. Yeah, working with Rick Scangarello, former NFL assistant,
college assistant,
was with the Kentucky coach Will Levis last year, offensive coordinator at Kentucky before he got fired. Right. So we'll see how that works out. But for JJ McCarthy, I honestly do not have I don't have a first round grade on him. I have more of a second round grade on him as a quarterback who I think he needs time. It's not a simple evaluation. I know you watched more of him, so I'll be eager to get some of your thoughts on JJ McCarthy. But I was high on him coming into the year because I was banking on his projection. He goes 15-0 as a starter at Michigan, wins the national title, and I still yet don't feel much better about him than I did before the year. Now, I think there's a lot of things going for him. I do, even though he needs to add weight, he's undersized, just from a pure bulk standpoint. I know some scouts thought he was right around 200 pounds, if not below 200 pounds this year. There's parts of his game that are more unproven than proven. And so there are question marks there, but I'm banking on a lot of the intangibles that he offers, a lot of the arm talent that he has. Does he have the arm talent of Caleb Williams? No one. I don't think anyone's saying that, but he has enough to be a functional NFL starter and perhaps more. But I think people roll their eyes when you hear the win-loss record, when you talk about intangibles and leadership and blah, blah, blah. People just, their eyes gloss over. That stuff matters to NFL teams. So even if you don't think it matters,
sideline, they freaking love this guy.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. And look, he was like, I don't know, I can't remember. I have it written down in my notes, like 36-2 in high school, 27-1 in college. This is a guy that he wins at every level, and he has that FU energy that if you're not with us, you're against us, and that mental. That's why I see some Zach Wilson comparisons to JJ McCarthy, and immediately they don't make sense because Zach Wilson shrunk in the NFL, and that was, it just looked like he had no confidence. JJ McCarthy is just oozing with confidence. I don't think the NFL is going to change that.
He might not have a lot of dropbacks on film, but he made more throws and structure than Zach Wilson did in their final years. Like that's the number one thing that when you're watching McCarthy.
Well, and so I do have JJ McCarthy going in the first round. I have him going to the Los Angeles Rams at number 20. And I think it's an interesting parallel when you think about the Packers when they drafted Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers was going into his age 36 season. Matthew Stafford right now going into his age 36 season. I don't think Stafford's going to retire tomorrow. Who knows when he'll be ready. He still looks like he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL when he's healthy.
Yes.
And that's a key thing here. I don't know how long Stafford plans on playing, how long his body will allow him to keep on playing, but it's at least a conversation the Rams have to have about the future. And maybe, McVay doesn't want to have that conversation because once Stafford's gone, he's ready to move on. Who knows? But that organization at least needs to have a conversation about the future of quarterback, and JJ McCarthy could be a guy they're interested in.
Yeah, and especially how this team is set up. I mean, I think the job that they put on this year, the Rams coaches, and just the draft that they had last year with Les Snead was one of the most impressive turnarounds. I wouldn't say turnarounds, revamps, I would say, that any team did this year. It's been really a lot of fun to watch, even if they lost.
They got the best bang for their buck in terms of draft picks.
Period. No, everything they did, every move they made, even just doing stuff with the line, just a lot of stuff, a lot of bets they made paid off this year, even if small.
Have you heard of Puka Nacua? I'm telling you, I think he's going to be good. Yeah.
I think he'll be all right. I think he might break 1,000 yards. But I actually really like McCarthy, and this is what I've come around in. I watched 3 more games yesterday. With Bama game. I watched Ohio State again. I had watched that before, but I was watching a different player. But I was watching Ohio State defensive players, and then I watched another one. But these 3 games, I see what everyone's saying with the flash stuff, and the fit with the Rams makes a lot of sense because of his ability to throw on the move, but also his ability to throw over the freaking middle of the field with no conscience. And that's what they love in that offense is the willingness to do that, the willingness to fit it into a tight window, to to throw the ball where it's supposed to go, and to find ways with a little bit of creativity. He has a little more creative flair. I mean, we saw the throwback double throw where he's catching with one hand and winging it. We see some of that, but I would even say some of the pocket movement, be able to move into like step, no fat in the movement, and then throw the ball and throw it accurately, create yards after the catch. So the Rams fit makes a ton of sense. I think those guys of that tree are going to really like JJ McCarthy. The Rams fit makes even more sense because look at who the Rams have brought in outside of Stafford. Stetson Bennett, who's 188 pounds,
27 years old.
Yeah. John Wolford, who was a smaller quarterback as well, was a pretty good athlete as well. But they're willing to let these guys.
Last year.
Baker, all these guys that can throw on the move. And that makes. And
they're
really
tough
matters.
SOBs.
Yes.
All of them.
And that's what McCarthy is. And I think McVay, ever since he had, when Jared Goff first got hurt in like 2020, and he had Wolford in there and he had another quarterback in there, but he was really doing the quarterback run game. And I think he's always just been like, I want to get back to that. Like I want to like use that a little bit. McCarthy, you can sprinkle it in just a little bit. Like, and that's where you see Michigan spam it whenever they need it. Like fourth quarter, huge drive. We got to milk this clock. There is the quarterback run game with McCarthy. So I've come around on him. I'm with you. I have like that late second, early third round grade on him, but there's more to like than maybe even I thought a couple of weeks ago. And that's not even including the games that what he did in the college football playoffs. I mean, the Bama game a little bit, but the other games before that, there's more flashes to it. The ability to throw on the move, the ability to create, guys are going to like that. And that accuracy. I still think there's some struggles throwing outside the numbers because he kind of forces it, but I don't know. There's more to work with than maybe I even thought about 6 weeks ago. So I understand that he might creep in.
And especially again with that mentality, that's catnip for coaches. The mental toughness. I was talking to a scout about him the other day, and he mentioned how talking to the guys at Michigan, the coaches, they said that when McCarthy signed out of high school, he was telling other Michigan recruits that if they wanted to party, if they wanted to go chase girls, stuff like that, go somewhere else. I mean, he had this mentality since he arrived at Michigan that, you know, he was going to be, they were going to be different. And so his makeup's a little bit different, just the way he's wired. I know the big story with him as a recruit was, I think it was his junior year, he broke his thumb in the state playoffs, the semifinals. They told him to shut it down, have surgery. He taped it up. He played, won the state title the next week, had surgery on Monday. And stuff like that is, again, it's catnip for coaches. Yes. That's what they love to hear. Yes. And when you put your money where your mouth is and actually go out and do it and win these games and win a state title, win a national title in college football, that stuff matters. And so people get fed up with the whole 27-01 and the winning and all that. At least be open-minded to the idea that a team would be able to talk themselves into JJ McCarthy in the first round.
So so that's 4 quarterbacks in the first round, and then you had 2 more in the second round. So you had Bo Nix at pick 34 to the Patriots. So there's that quarterback of the future possibly, and then Michael Penix Jr. to the Raiders at pick 44. So that is, I would agree that this is kind of the top 6. I mean, it just like this is these 3, McCarthy, Nix, and Penix are kind of that fight for QB4 to me right now. All kind of really graded like day 2 guys for me right now. So Nix to the Patriots and Penix to the Raiders. What kind of like led you to these kind of paths or these kind of the consolation prizes, all those types of things? I mean, I actually kind of like these fits, to be honest. So I wanted to hear you talk about them.
Well, I mean, with the Patriots, again, there's so much we don't know, but it feels like the status quo is not good enough. I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree there. So what are you going to do to help the quarterback situation? I think Bo Nix, I have my issues with him as a as a quarterback, but he could bring a spark to that team. And it's so strange hearing the differing opinions throughout the league on him. There are some in the league that absolutely believe he's going first round, that he will be a top 25 pick. Others believe he'll be available in the third round. So it's just a wide range of opinions on Bo Nix, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But again, when it comes to quarterbacks, 31 teams could have a certain opinion on one, and all it takes is one team to think a little bit better of a player, and next thing you know, they go down in history as a first-round pick. So Bo Nix will be interesting where he ends up. He was 2 months old when Bill Belichick was hired as the Patriots head coach. So just some context to where
we're at.
At the time, how that's all played out. But we'll see how the Patriots situation evolves throughout the next few months and how that will hopefully give us an idea of their draft strategy. But then with the Raiders and Michael Penix, it just feels like, again, with the Raiders, they have to do something here to add some type of new life to that quarterback room. Aiden O'Connell's a nice player, but what are you going to do to get better in the room? And Michael Penix could potentially be that guy. And we're talking about the 44th pick. I think Michael Penix is probably more likely to go 44 than he is to go 14. Based off of just his ability, but then also we factor in the age, factor in the medicals. But the Raiders are in a spot where it's like, hey, it's the 44th pick in the draft. Let's roll the dice and see what we have here. I think that's potentially how they could be thinking. But again, they don't. It's just another team. We don't know the general manager yet. We don't know the head coach. In theory, it makes sense. And I think you could also maybe say the same thing about the Vikings. They're picking 2 picks earlier at 42. Would they be in a position, even if they do bring back Kirk Cousins, could they be in a position to, we saw when the revolving door of quarterbacks after Cousins went out, could Michael Penix be a guy they lean on, especially early in the season if Cousins isn't ready to go right away? So I think the Vikings at 42 and then even the Falcons at 43, if they don't get a quarterback in the first round, could be an option there. So 42, 43, 44, those 3 spots are interesting landing spots for either Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Like you said, it just takes one, any player, but especially quarterbacks. And quarterbacks make people lose their mind. So you especially if you have a decision maker that has a lot of influence in the room. You can get some interesting picks at that position. But I also want to ask you. I think we both at the same time we're kind of rising this guy up. You already mentioned him a little bit as guy that this guy sneak into the top 10? Maybe not. Was Brian Thomas is your receiver 4 from LSU? You had him going to the Jaguars at pick 17, I believe. And I was I thought your last line of this was very interesting because I kind of seeing it and kind of hearing the same thing. By the time April rolls around, he might not be an option outside of the top 15. And I think maybe this is just want to give you a second to maybe gush about Thomas and maybe why he could be a riser this next couple of months. We've talked about him a little bit before, but maybe why he's going to be a name to note outside of his very famous teammates, Daniels and Neighbors.
Yeah, and Brian Thomas, he really came on this year, and he was a big time recruit coming out of high school. He's from Louisiana. He was a big time basketball player, especially I think he led his high school team to the state championship as a freshman, as a freshman, and then he didn't even play football until a sophomore year. He was basketball focused, and then at some point it switched over to football, and this past year is where he really exploded. He had almost 1,200 yards, led FBS in receiving touchdowns with 17. Nobody had more receiving touchdowns than he did. It's just an outstanding size-speed combination, and it's not stiff. He's very fluid. Yes. As a route runner, you see the type of acceleration you need to beat NFL corners. He has a little stutter step release, and then he quickly eats up that grass. Can get over top man, can get open underneath, and he does a nice job at mid-air adjustments at the catch point, plays strong to the football. He'll work back to the ball. He'll box out. You see that basketball background with the way that the box out angles that he uses. So there's also a minimal delay going from catcher to runner, and that's uncommon for a bigger receiver like him, right? And so, and he has natural run instincts, I think, too. It's not just I'm going to get 3 yards and then go down. He can make the first man miss. He's a really impressive athlete, and then what he did as a blocker too. So all these things are, as I say them, I'm like, yeah, he might not be there outside of the top 15 picks, because when you have the length that he offers, the fluidity, the speed, the ball winning athleticism, and then just his budding route instincts. You could see it.
That's it.
Connecting the dots. This is a really dangerous weapon. And so, what's his upside? T. Higgins, or, he has a lot of ability that I think teams are going to look at and say, yeah, he's good now, but we're 3 years from now. That's what we're really excited about. And so I don't think a team would really bat an eye drafting him somewhere in the top 15 picks.
That's what has me excited is you said it, it's budding kind of route awareness, route running is if you watch this one game from each month of LSU and watch him improve each month in his route running and his feel. And he has for 6'4", 205, I believe he's listed at. He has very, very light feet. And that is, like you say, that is not normal to be that agile. I've been struggling with a comparison for him in my brain, but it was like some of the footwork stuff is kind of like Sutton, Cortland Sutton, but I think he's actually way better player than Sutton is. And I like Sutton, and Sutton's more of a ball winner. And that's the thing is like Thomas has that size, not saying he's finessey, but it's like, man, he plays like a guy that's more 6 foot 190. But that's how he moves and everything, and has that kind of yards after a catch. But I'm a huge fan. You had him very early, way up your board, and I got to watch him early when I was watching the LSU offense. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I agree with you. I think he's just going to keep rising up the board. The guy that was in contention, maybe receiver 2 for a while, Keon Coleman, you have at pick 29 going to the Bills, giving them another weapon, to add with Khalil Shakir. Maybe to give a Stephon Diggs succession plan, but Coleman kind of maybe some people that might be a little bit falling. Any kind of like insight on that to maybe the back half of the first round when he was looked at maybe as a top 12 pick for a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know, with Keon Coleman, he's just a different type of weapon, right? That Buffalo usually had, that Josh Allen has had over his career. People are going to ding Keon Coleman because he's not the best separator at the top of routes. I think when you focus on what Keon Coleman does really well, and that's just the physical abilities, the size, the body control, you could argue he's the best in this class at the catch point because he can make these unbelievable adjustments on the ball, 50-50 grabs, several, the one-handed stuff, the way that he can maintain his focus to track finish while he's wearing defenders like a backpack. It's impressive. Yes. And he consistently draws pass interference calls because, especially in the red zone, that's where he can really flex his muscles. So, I mean, he is... I think he's getting dinged by people a little bit too much because this is still a really good player. And I mean, you don't have 100 plus receiving yards, 100 plus punt return yards in the same game. First to do it at Florida State since Peter Warrick. You don't do that if you're a bad athlete. So
that's what I'm kind of wrap my head around too.
Yeah. So I mean, he fell to the bottom of the first round in this mock draft, but I don't think he's going to run great. But I mean, he'll be somewhere in the 4.5s, but it might be closer to 4.5 or a 4.6, like a 4.56, something like that. Okay. But this is a player that I think teams are still excited about, and if you get him in the back half of round 1,
right,
you're going to feel really good about that. And when we've seen players, whether it's AJ Brown or players with maybe some question marks that teams made a mistake because they focused on what he didn't do instead of focusing on what he did do. AJ Brown is a second round pick because teams focused on what he didn't do, and can he play outside? Does he have the speed to win one-on-one down the field? I mean, instead of right.
Oh, he's a slot guy. It's like, well,
focus on what he does well and how, and maybe what he does well doesn't fit your offense perfectly, and that's fine. Right. But for a lot of teams, this Keon Coleman could be exactly what they're looking for. And I think the Bills could be one of those teams because, again, he's a different type of weapon, gives Josh Allen a huge catch radius. So even if he's not open, he's open. And so when you focus on what Keon Coleman does well, I think, you start to, he's still a good player.
Yeah, I love it too, especially because I have him as still a first round grade, and I kind of have softened a little bit on him, but I just kind of keep, like you said, I keep seeing him getting dinged. I'm like, man, I just see this guy dunking on guys, and I see him
Yeah.
catching the ball over the middle and adjusting for it, and then actually breaking tackles, which is not what you see from usually long, gangly guys. So it's I
don't think it's necessarily anything that he did. It's more just
other guys
watching more of these guys, and I like Brian Thomas more, or Roma Dunze is a better prospect, and I like what he has to. So it's just more a product of other players being really good in this class, and this being just another loaded wide receiver group. 11 wide receivers off the board in this 2-round mock draft. So, and 5 in the first round, 6 in the second round, and I know I'm already getting yelled at for some of the receivers that I didn't have in there. So this is going to be a receiver class that stretches a little bit, and there should be some pretty good players even into the third round.
That group of 6 maybe that made your second round, any that you want to highlight? There's one interesting name that I got to watch this morning, but any of these guys that you want to highlight? You had Donnie Mitchell going to the Panthers at 33, Jalen Polk from Washington going to the Falcons at 43. Love that fit. Ladd McConkey to the Bengals at 49. I love that one because you're saying he's a Tyler Boyd replacement. Troy Franklin from Oregon to the Browns at 54. Really like that one. Xavier Worthy to the Bucks at 57. Yeah, I mean, this is like fantasy booking, they call it in wrestling. Right. But then the last one, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky going to the Texans. And that's kind of who I was angling this conversation towards. But any of these guys you want to talk to, specifically Corley from Western Kentucky?
Let's talk about all of them because, I think Malachi Corley to the Texans in the second round is one of my favorite team player matches in this draft. When you think about D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Slowick, where'd they come from? San Francisco. Mm-hmm. They saw firsthand the impact of Deebo Samuel and what he brought to that offense with that play style. Malachi Corley brings the exact same play style. I'm not going to say he's Deebo Samuel or on that level, but he's close. They call him the Yak King for a reason. He is a wide receiver before the catch, a running back after the catch. He will run over you. What did you watch Louisiana? I think it was Louisiana Tech. Did you watch that tape this morning?
I did, and I saw it in your video too on him, or your tweet on that game as well.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, he just embarrassed dudes.
I watched Ohio State this morning. He ran over 3 of their DBs on just, who he runs like, and this is just a modern comparison and not the same size, just smaller. He's smaller, Corley's smaller. Rashee Rice. And maybe because they get used the same, but a lot of those, a lot of bubbles, a lot of like flat, but he's not just a gadget player. That's an alarm bell for me. It's just flats. It's just screens and smoke screens and stuff. It's like, no, you see the flashes of downfield stuff, especially with the route running, but I agree with you. He's explosive. He's strong, very physical. There's flashes of route running. It's a little loose right now, but he has ability that you can work with. So that's really
why, I think the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, these all-star games can get beat up a little bit when you say what can they show in 1 week that they didn't put on film for 3 weeks or for 3 years, why is 1 week going to change a grade? A guy like Malachi Corley, 75% of his targets or his catches in college came within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So he can do it downfield, but it's not as frequent. It's just not what they asked him to do.
It's an old air raid offense. So it's all yak. Get short throws everywhere.
He had a specific role with what they wanted him to do, and he executed it very well. At the Senior Bowl is where he can maybe show, hey, I'm more than this. I can win downfield. I can win in the one-on-ones and the outside against corners, doing more than just using my physicality to break tackles. So, this guy, he's got that compact build. He looks like a running back. He has the mentality of a running back. He's going to run over dudes. His ability to accelerate to top speed quickly is impressive because he'll translate that into contact, run over guys, power through tackle attempts. He averaged 9.2 yards per reception over the last 2 years at Western Kentucky. That's a ridiculous number.
First down of basically.
It's crazy. I mean, he was really productive. He is the all-time catches leader in Western Kentucky history. Really good guy as well. I get a lot of strong character stuff from him. So from scouts on the player. So Malachi Corley, I love that fit to Houston. I mean, I don't think wide receiver is necessarily number one need for them. So, Tank Dell, you expect come back healthy. Nico Collins with what he did. Noah Brown's a useful player. They still expect good things from wide receiver from Alabama,
John Mechie.
Yes. So, I don't think wide receiver is necessarily flashing in bright lights as, hey, we need to go get one. But the thought of adding a guy like this with a CJ Stroud in that offense with a role that I think this coaching staff will be familiar with, just love that fit.
I do too. I really liked it. I really liked the player. That one makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and how he would fit in there too. There's more receiver to him than I thought initially going in, which I was very excited. His ball skills are very real. Like he can adjust for catches behind his body. So yeah, a very, very fun player. There's a lot of receivers.
Well, and I wanted to talk about at 33 with Carolina, because this is an interesting spot for them, because they're going to feel pressured to help the quarterback with this pick.
Yes,
every move they make this offseason is going to feel like they're pressured to help the quarterback. But with a new GM coming in, new philosophy with how they attack the roster and just the whole management of what they're doing out there, new coaching staff. But still, I think at 33, they're going to feel pressured, especially if they don't get the T. Higgins, or they don't get that big fish in free agency or trade. How are they going to help the quarterback? Right. I have them taking Adonai Mitchell from Texas, who I think this is a little rich for where most people in the league, most teams expect him to be drafted, but he has high upside.
He has round though. I'm guessing. I'm kind of late
probably
on him, so yeah, but that's still okay. Okay.
I think it's high upside. It's okay. What can this guy, if he hits, what can he be for us? Because he is a very loose athlete. And he's a good sized player. There's a lot that could, a lot of good that could come from this pick. So yeah, that's an interesting one. You mentioned Jalen Polk to the Falcons. I think that's
a great one.
Yeah, that's one that I was surprised, but I wasn't when I realized that the Falcons receivers had only 4 touchdowns this year.
Yeah,
shocked. I
incredible.
Surprised, but I wasn't.
Was it 2 of them to Scotty Miller as well?
Scotty Miller. That's right.
Yeah.
Drake London had 2. Scotty Miller had the other 2.
Oh man, trust me,
unbelievable.
I watched too much Falcons this year, I can tell you.
Oh, I know you did.
There's about 7 of those touchdowns were about 1 inch away, and they turned into turnovers or something. Oh yeah. I know. As someone that had way too much money invested in Falcons over 8.5 wins, that was that was an interesting game. But no, I really like the poke to the Falcons one because it just makes sense. He's a Z. He blocks his ass off too. I know Arthur Smith is no longer there, but that's still a valued asset. So I like that one a lot.
Yeah, and Drake London, I think, can be a legit number 1, and you had a guy like this at number 2, and you're in good shape moving forward. Lad McConkey to the Bengals. This is McConkey. I if you told me that he is going to average 15 to 16 games over his rookie contract, 15 to 16 games a year over his rookie contract, I would have no problem pulling the trigger on him, the top 40 picks, maybe even the first round. He's missed a lot. He's been banged up often the last 2 years, and he's a smaller guy, and I think that's going to worry a lot of teams. But here at 49, you look at the Bengals, and we've probably seen the last of the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd in Cincinnati, and McConkey could be that guy that helps them transition to the next phase of what that offense looks like. And you want to scare defenses, Lad McConkey will help you scare defenses with Joe Burrow throwing the rock.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect for how they use him too, because they don't need that slot guy to be like a blocker or a scrappy guy or like a scrapper and all that physical guy.
Just get open. And
there's a lot of space with Jamar Chase and with or without T. Higgins, but there's going to be a lot of space for him to work with. So no, I thought that one was a great one. I was maybe on a flip over. I actually had one more question. I noticed that you gave the Chiefs a tight end replacement in the second round. Would you want to talk about the heir to Travis Kelce's throne? I'm not going to put him in that category, but that's unfair. But I did notice that little fit that you had there.
Well, and I think that maybe long term he's the heir, but I think right now he's the complement. I think that with what you put him out there, he's more receiver than blocker, but he's just another option that I think Patrick Mahomes will feel comfortable throwing to. He will gain trust in what he can offer. So, who knows? I mean, Travis Kelce's going to play as long as he wants, that might not be. He might retire in 6 years. Who knows? But the opportunity to bring in a guy that's going to help to learn under Kelce, you can have him on the field at the same time. I think it just helps the offense. So yeah, and again, this is pick 59. So when you're talking about outside the top 50 picks, let's just draft good players. Let's draft guys that we think can, really be an asset to our team. And I think Sanders is that guy.
Yeah, Jatavion Sanders from Texas, and that's what he is. He's a move tight end, but they know how to use those guys. So I thought that was a very interesting one.
And he'll be not got announced today. He'll be at the Shrine Bowl. Okay. He's not going to play, but he will be there to interview with teams, interview with media. So just kind of he's a Texas guy. He's from I believe he's from Denton Ryan, which is right there in North Texas. It's an opportunity for him to get some FaceTime with scouts before the combine, answer any questions, and so good on him for taking advantage of that opportunity at the Shrine Bowl, which is going to be in Frisco coming up here in a week and a half.
You can just drive on down to it. So you mentioned Corley as one of your favorite team fits. Did you have any other favorite kind of like player team fits that you kind of were like, ooh, I like that one? Like you're like, yeah, that scratch an itch, or maybe a little narrative thing that you really like there.
Yeah, in the back in the first round, I really like Jackson Powers Johnson, the Oregon center, to Miami at 22. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of my favorite fits. I think when you look at Powers Johnson, I'm still searching for the bad tape. I'm still looking. He had such a good year this year for Oregon. He's a center, but he has guard experience. He's a good-sized player, good-sized athlete. The way he moves, he's strong at the point of attack. He finishes. He'll get a little overzealous at times, a little over-aggressive, but it's not something that hinders his game. He's a young, ascending player, and I think it maybe surprise people that I'm going 22 that early, but I love the fit in Miami. He is a plug-and-play guy that really can help all three of those interior positions.
It seems no matter what, when we do mocks for the Dolphins, it's like we need versatile offensive linemen. Just versatile, like that's just which hole do they need? Just fill it. Just give them a guy. So that's been one of the easier fits. No, that's a guy that I've watched recently, but that's a riser, I would call, because that is somebody that has been kind of picking up some steam. I would say another riser also. I'm trying to tie this to Pacific Northwest. You had going to the Seahawks. They're not from Washington, but you had Byron Murphy from Texas going to pick number 16, I believe, to the Seahawks. So Byron Murphy, kind of this is a little bit of jump up there. So what are your thoughts on Murphy? Defensive tackle is kind of there's not a lot of names up at the top of the draft at this point in time. So some thoughts on Murphy as your DT1 at this point in time, as far as in this mock draft.
Yeah, no, and I think he is the top defensive tackle with the way he plays. He's so disruptive versus both the pass and the run. He is a hard guy to block, and he'll get beat up through the process because he's not the biggest player. We'll see what the exact measurements are: height, length, hands, all that. But just the tape and the metrics are heavily in favor of Murphy. He had a pass rush win percentage rate 19.6% this year. No other defensive tackle in the country was above 17%. You think about some of these
10% is good.
For an interior player, absolutely. And Kalijah Cansey was a top 20 pick last year. We've seen undersized defensive tackles go in the top 20 before, so I don't think it should surprise anybody if Byron Murphy gets up there. And I think he's going to test well. At 300 pounds, he might run in the 4.7s in the 40, and some of the other drills should look nice too. So again, I think it's just all about checking the boxes. Tape checks, metrics check. We'll see what the testing numbers, but if it's the check that I expect it to be, no surprise why he would go this early. And Seattle, I know they traded a second, for Leonard Williams, and so it's kind of like, all right, we're using our first two picks on interior defensive linemen, but at the same time, let's just keep getting better. Let's keep throwing our assets at a position that we need to get better at. And Murphy, again, when you can be disruptive versus the pass and the run, that could be such an asset. And so I kind of like this marriage, and I like Murphy going this early.
I love when you get the different flavor on the defensive front. Like even you had Dallas Turner going to the Bears defensive front. Him and Sweat complement each other because they are a little bit different styles, even if they both are two-way players. But like Murphy with the Seahawks front, you brought up Leonard Williams, but a lot of their guys are kind of those mauler bruiser types. So you get kind of that more, shooter type, the one that's right. Can really disrupt as those other guys are kind of plugging. So I always kind of like that kind of mix, and you have no idea what kind of defensive system they're going to run. So that's a whole nother. So I consider that a riser. Was there any other guys that you kind of jumped up here, maybe in the first round or the second round, that you want to highlight as guys that you're noting rising for you, rising what you're hearing, or just, generally good?
I mean, we touched on a bunch of them already. I think Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Michigan, going 37 overall. I think he benefits from a defensive tackle class that isn't great, but you look at what he offers. I think a lot of teams are going to be in on Chris Jenkins and saying, okay, if we don't get him here in the second, he won't be there for us in the third. So we're comfortable drafting him here in the top 40, top 50 picks. He'd be one. Some of these safeties, I think, in the second round are going to make a lot of sense. That they're just good players. Jaden Hicks from Washington State. I am going to the Packers at 41. He has almost the size of a linebacker. He's 6'2", 215. He is that intimidator over the middle of the field. I mean,
coaches are going to love it.
As a Wisconsin fan, I know from that game this year, laying out dudes over the middle of the field. But he's also, he can cover. He picked off Michael Penix this year. I can't remember. I think it was might have been a slot fade. But he is a guy that can do different things, wear different hats. He can play the nickel. He can play the box. He can play deep. There's a lot of things you could do with Jaden Hicks in a 6'2", 215-pound body. So like him quite a bit. The other safety that I think has been maybe moving up a little bit, Javon Bullard from Georgia. He's every single tape I watched on him this year, he made his presence known in the run game, and I think he'll get dinged a little bit because I don't expect him to be a great tester. But for a safety, I think he's going to be just fine, and he's just enough range where he can make plays in coverage and not just totally get beat. So Javon Bullard from Georgia, another one of these Georgia DBs that maybe not go until the second round, but he's a good player.
Yeah, and honestly, there's another name that was we're talking defense right now, but even it makes sense that you're talking about, this guy might rise up, this guy is a new name, or this guy teams are going to like and everything, is because defensive tackle, linebacker, and safety, there's not a lot of guys at the top of the board. Right. So there's going to be guys that are going to rise as this guy's interesting, because that's what's going to be his more interesting name. So the first linebacker you had off the board, speaking of which, was Junior Colson from Michigan at pick 50 to the Eagles, which is a very relevant position need that I thought was very timely that you slotted that one in there. So what has Colson kind of improved throughout the process as you watch more of him?
Yeah, I think he's reliable. He's rock solid. I don't think he might not have an elite area to his game, but everything he does, he's a good quality player. He's not going to be the fastest linebacker at the combine, but he'll be just fine. He'll run well. He plays physical. He plays tough. He'll play through injuries. The background's kind of crazy. He grew up in a Haitian orphanage and came to the U.S. and didn't know English, didn't know football, didn't know anything, and just gradually grew into this, really dominant linebacker in high school, and then goes to Michigan and continues to get better and better. And here we are. I think he's got a chance to be a top 50 draft pick. And it's funny, the Eagles, they have 3 picks in the top 2 rounds. All 3 picks are back 7 defenders in this mock draft, and if you need to know why you didn't watch the game last night against the Bucks, they need help in a big way because it's as much as we want to get on them about the coaching, it's just personnel. They just don't have it, and so in the first round, I had them taking Quinyon Mitchell, I believe, and then corner from Toledo. And then in the second round, Junior Colson here at 50, and then they have another second round pick. I haven't taken Bullock, Kalen Bullock, the safety from USC, rangy, true center field type. Those 3 picks make a lot of sense and very topical based on how that Bucks and Eagles game played out. Another one of my favorite fits was Well, what the Steelers did in this mock in the first round, they go Cooper DeJean, a guy that we know he can play in that black and yellow. And you think about the Steelers, they could use an outside corner, but they could also
those uniforms, so that makes a lot of sense. They did. They had to deal with them. They had to match the.
There you go.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
The Steelers need an outside corner, but they can also use an inside corner. They could also use a box guy. They can also use. Cooper does all that stuff.
It's great.
So
I love that. Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr., and Cooper DeJean. Yeah, sign me up. That's great.
I do. Yeah, I think that fit makes a lot of sense. And then the second, I haven't taken Zach Frazier from West Virginia, who grew up just south of Pittsburgh. He embodies that Pittsburgh. What you think of a Pittsburgh offensive lineman, and you talk about two guys are going to help. Yeah. Oh, yeah. he has that mentality. I mean, we mentioned how after he broke his leg, trying to get off the field, just so they didn't have to waste a timeout or get the penalty, 10-second runoff late in that final game. Now, obviously, that injury will play a factor in where he's ultimately drafted, but as long as it's the rehab's going well, it's healing just fine. I think that, he's still going to be somewhere in this day 2 conversation. And for the Steelers, you take the long-term look with Zach Frazier, he could be starting center for you, at some point in October next year, which obviously is a position they need to address. So to DeJean and Frazier, those 2 picks, I think will go a long way to kind of helping the culture, I think, is going to be fine as long as Tomlin's there, but 2 guys that'll help edge it in the right direction. So I liked what they did. And then, Troy Franklin to the Browns. The Browns are kind of tough. They don't pick in the top 50 this year, but when you look at that offense needing another explosive element, Franklin is, I know some people like him in the first round. I just can't get there. And I haven't heard any feedback from NFL teams that he's in the first round.
Yeah.
He's an unpolished player, and so there are question marks. But again, if you're the Browns, you're picking at 54. More likely than not, you're getting a guy at 54 who's going to have some warts on him.
Yep.
But they want explosive young talents, and that's what Troy Franklin is. He was top 3 in the country this year, 8 catches over 40 yards. He was one of only 2 receivers that had at least 1,300 yards receiving and 14 receiving touchdowns. Him and Malik Neighbors. So there's a lot to like about him as a get down the field, go make a play, and you add him to that mix in Cleveland, and you might have something even as early as his rookie year. And then one more I wanted to talk about was Jonathan Brooks.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah.
Your only running back, I believe, in the first 2 rounds?
I wasn't planning on doing a running back in these first 2 rounds, especially when Travion Henderson went back to school. Yep. It's interesting when you think about who that first running back's going to be. Is it going to be Audric Estime from Notre Dame? Is it going to be, could Blake Corum get up there? There's not a consensus running back one, especially with Jonathan Brooks coming off the ACL injury. But the Cowboys, Troy Pollard, he's a free agent. Yeah, excuse me, Tony Pollard. He's a pending free agent. We don't know if he's going to be back or not. I'm sure he's going to want to get paid, and the Cowboys are probably not going to pay him the money that he wants. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But when you look at Jonathan Brooks, a guy that maybe had an early second-round grade before the injury, you have a chance to get him at 56, and this is a Cowboys team that's not afraid to take risks within that second round. They've done it often when it comes to you talk about Randy Gregory, Jalen Smith coming off that major injury at Notre Dame. I mean even last year with a Schoonmaker, like a guy that is a good player, but you're telling me that Jonathan Brooks can't make a bigger impact than Schoonmaker, who they drafted around the same area last year. So Brooks, even coming off the ACL injury, but here's the key thing with him: the guy that did his ACL surgery, is the Cowboys team physician.
It's a great point.
Nobody's going to have better information than the Cowboys about when's he going to be back on the field? When realistically will he be able to run and be game ready? And all those questions will be answered for the Cowboys, because now all these other teams will have these answers too, because their own doctors will look at them and all that. But nobody will have better information than the Cowboys. And again, I think this is just a fit that makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels.
I like that one a lot, and he's supremely talented. It's a Texas running back. It's like, of course they have a guy. they get a 5-star guy every single year. But we just talked about some risers. But were there any guys that fell or surprises, or guys that you're kind of feeling that their ground is kind of maybe falling a little bit, or their floors falling a little bit when you're doing this, or just anything you're hearing?
I think, well, and some of these guys I think were a little overvalued to begin with. Like Cameron Kitchens, like he's a nice player. He's a good player. It's just, he's not that first round pick that a lot of people want him to be.
The effort's just not there for a first rounder. Like the consistent play to play, the down to down kind of like.
Yeah, and it's just he'll make a play, one play he'll make a play, and then he'll miss the next two, or like he's a good player. He's just he's an inconsistent player, and so. Right now, if you had to say over under, the top 75 picks, I mean that's kind of what this over under is. At least that's how NFL teams grade. I mean that's why I was really glad to see Kitchens accept his Senior Bowl invite. That's another guy who has a chance to really help himself with a good week in Mobile. A lot of teams need safeties, and Kitchens, he has a lot to offer. It's not like he's a bad player. It's just, can he be more consistent? Can he convince teams that he will be, he has yet to reach his ceiling. He has more upside and will continue to get better and better with more coaching. So Kitchens would definitely fall in that category. But some guys
are going to like him because he's just such a smart player. Like, but it's just like you have to understand what he is.
Right, exactly. And so, and it's interesting. Another theme with the second round was offensive linemen, and how we're going to see a lot of them go in the first round. Yeah. And so who's going to be left in the second round? And once those guys are gone, are we going to see maybe some reaches? And we have a third round grade on this guy, but we need to take him here at 45. Talking about the Saints, they need offensive line help. I haven't taken Dominic Pooney from Kansas, who I think realistically is maybe more of a late second, early third, but they take him in the top 50 because, hey, we need offensive line help, and if we don't draft him here, he won't be there for us in the third, and we don't love our third round options at that point. So offensive linemen, after those guys come flying off the board in the first round, it just thins out a lot in the second round, and that could help some guys maybe go a little bit earlier than we thought.
Okay. And speaking of which, you had one offensive lineman that you snuck in the back half of the second round, and it was a Yale Bulldog at offensive tackle. Yeah. I'm not going to try and say his last name, so I'd love to hear you talk about this guy, because he is a new name for me, and I think it's a very interesting one to be thrown out here, because I think he's an interesting prospect overall. So why don't you talk about this Yale Bulldog from this offensive tackle prospect?
Yes. Karan Amagaji.
Okay.
Amagaji. It's around there.
Close. I would be close.
He's one of my favorite players in the draft. He's not going to be talked about a lot because he's an Ivy Leaguer and he's hurt right now. So we're not going to see him at the Senior Bowl. We're not going to see him at the Combine. He'll be at the Combine. He's not going to be working out. And he's a young player. He grew up a basketball guy. And he's kind of late to football. He didn't actually start playing football until 8th grade. It's been a gradual process for him, and then he goes to Yale, and his first season's wiped out because of COVID, so he doesn't get on the field until his sophomore year. He starts at guard, and then the last 2 years he's at left tackle before his injury back in October this year. So and he might not go this early because of all those factors, but and I'm going to the 49ers, who again, it's about planning for the future. And do you need a left tackle tomorrow? No, but in a year and tomorrow, you might. So drafting a guy like this now that you can develop and learn from one of the greats and Trent Williams, and need someone that can also help maybe at right tackle this year. That's another area that 49ers could address. So I think that's a fit that would make sense for a really promising young player with a ton of talent. This guy he's one of the longest players in the draft. For as athletic as he is, his arms are 36 3/4, which is remarkable. I mean, it's
long because Paris Johnson was like 36 and a half, right? So he even got that. Man.
Well, yeah, DeJuan Jones was
up there too, right?
Yeah, but yeah, that's as long as you can hope for.
Yeah, that's as long as you hear. Yeah.
So we'll see if that's the number scouts gave me. So if that comes to fruition and that's what he actually is at the Combine, well, we'll wait and see. But that'll definitely
hopefully they can count on that campus. Hopefully they're using the metric system. Maybe is that
what they do in the Ivy League?
Yeah.
He is a guy that's impressive. I've talked to him multiple times. He's really smart guy. Yeah. Character's great. coaches really like him. And then again, the athletic traits, the length, and it's like, all right, yeah, let's take a swing on this guy, even as early as the second round, and see what we have down the road.
And someone will, especially at that position. There's some interesting day 2 guys at the tackle position. Even the guy, Kingsley from BYU in the end of the first round, I believe you had in there. Like, no, it's so interesting. And I bet you there's a lot of Northeast area scouts that were very happy about this prospect. Going like, oh, we got somebody. I got somebody that's interesting at one of these schools. So, and yeah, just the last thing is any guys that maybe you had thought about on these mocks or on your big board that return to school, kind of the best that are returning to school, and guys that you'll see in about 4 months when you do your way too early big board and mock draft right after the draft at the end of April.
Well, nobody benefited more than Ohio State, right? All the guys they got back, from JT, he would have made Tuamalo. He would have made this mock draft. Yep. Whether it was late first or early second, I don't know, but he would have been in there. Trayvon Henderson, the running back, might have been in there. Emeka Ibuka probably would have been in there. Denzel Burke, the corner, probably would have been in there. Sawyer probably would have been in there. I mean, they had a lot of guys. I was told that the day after the Michigan National Championship game was the biggest, most lucrative day for the collective at Ohio State. That's
hilarious.
Ohio State has one of the biggest alumni bases, so I mean, there's no reason why it shouldn't be, obviously. But clearly, they want to get back on the right side of things for them as they see this rivalry. But they have with Will Howard, we'll see how that comes to fruition. But with all the guys they came back, nobody benefited more. And bringing in Quinshon Judkins, a running back from Ole Miss. I mean, it's going to be expectations might be too high. This is for Ryan Day. It's playoff. It's not even playoffs. It's because it's a 12-team playoff next year. So not even playoffs is enough. You have to beat Michigan and go to the national title game to justify keeping your job. And hey, the talent's there with all these guys that went back and that will not be in this draft. But it'll be interesting.
They didn't get their number 1 quarterback prospect though, probably Cam Ward or anything. Who I felt
went to
like
Miami,
every single day changed between he's going to the draft and going to a new school, and then ended up going to Miami. So that's
he made the right choice, I think. I mean, I think he was a dark horse. Maybe could go ahead of Penix. Maybe could sneak into the top 75. Yeah, maybe, but. Another year, I think, is going to benefit him more long term, and we'll see how it plays out. But it always felt like he was leaning more towards going back than actually coming out.
Yeah, there's a few guys that I'm very glad went back, including Van Dyke, who's at Wisconsin now. So that'll be an interesting twofer for me this upcoming year. But no, that was awesome. I'm glad. We're fully in it. We got the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Game coming up in a couple of weeks. Other All-Star games as well. We got, of course, the Super Bowl. But then after that, man, it's like 2 weeks. Then you got the Combine. Oh man, then we're getting pro days. We're in it. We're in Dane's season
next week. We'll preview Senior Bowl with Mr. Jim Nagy himself. He'll help us kind of run through what to look for in Mobile, and so that'll be a lot of fun. And it's always crazy because All-Star game. Does that change anything? And we got a lot of stuff coming up here.
Get ready for some one-on-one clips on Twitter. So just get ready for get ready for a lot of guys getting tossed in shorts and a 5-second route that you'll never see ever in a game situation. But hey, we got to see some breaking ability and some body control. But no, just get ready for it. We're in it. And it's awesome. So thank you so much to Dane for joining me. As always on Prospects and Pros, we will be here every single Wednesday as the draft season rolls on. We'll see you guys next time.